Hello, my name is Michael Kropf, and today I'm going to demonstrate SELinux. I'm going to use Red Hat Enterprise 10 and Apache to do the demo. Now to get started, SELinux is an extra layer of security to help protect your operating system. Think of it like a security guard back in the old days where we use keys to access office building rooms. In this case, a custodian who has access to every room in the building may not be allowed inside, say, the CEO's office. And the security guard is an extra level of protection to make sure that person does not enter that office. But in this case, think of the security guard as SELinux and the rooms as things like files on your operating system and storage. What happens with Apache is if someone actually compromises Apache running on your system, that compromise involves somebody running with root access, and they have access to the entire file system on your computer. And we're going to use SELinux to stop that from happening. Even though the process is running at root, that process is only going to have access to what it needs and should have access to. All right, so let's take a look here. Let's type in an SE status. We can see we do have SELinux configured and running. It is running by default on Red Hat Enterprise Linux. If we take a look at the config file, we can see we have three different methods: enforcing, permissive, and disabled. Disabled is obviously has it shut off. Permissive is if you want to do testing, you want SELinux to log blocks, but not actually do the block. Now, SELinux type, we have three different modes there as well. Default is targeted, which is going to protect the major processes like Apache. It's going to make sure, daemons like DNS, SSH, they're all protected. Minimum is going to be where you're going to explicitly define what you want protected. Maybe you just want one process protected and that's it. MLS is going to be much more complicated. Maybe for something like DoD, government, where in this case you're going to have to create special contacts for every group and you're going to have to configure all that. It's going to be much harder to keep and maintain, but the basics are still going to apply. What you're going to see here in the demo will still apply to a complex configuration as well. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate this using Apache, and I'm going to show you what happens when you try to take the default directory, move it from the location it is normally installed to a special location on your hard drive. I'm going to do that right now. I am going to create a directory called web data. And I am going to create a default HTML directory or file. And I'm going to call that hello from web data so that we know what we're hitting when we hit it. If I actually look, right now, I have the default web directory. You can see I had the page up from when I was running and testing this, but right now we are just running out of the web directory. Right now, you can see I had port 82 before. Port 82 is not working. We are going to change the port as well. But right now, let's focus on just the web directory or the web root. We're going to go into and configure HTML, the HTTP, to use this new location. Need VI for this. So we're going to change the document root. I'm going to change that to my new directory, web data. Make sure I have access granted in Apache as well. And I am now going to restart the Apache service. And if I do that, it should be looking at the web data directory. It is, but it does not have permission. And we can take a look at this with the logging files. If I do, it's called ausearch. This is going to be specific to SELinux. And I'm going to type run here, and I'm going to see it is being denied. And the reason is I have something called an unconfined context. And that is the default context, just so you know. And that is not going to allow me to access that directory. It has to have a specific security context. What is that? Well, let's take a look at what we know works. Well, first we're going to take a look at the current directory. And notice the extra command here, the capital Z. You can see I in fact do have an unconfined context here. And we're going to contrast that to what we know worked. So the HTML directory has something called an HTTP syscontent context. That is what we have to apply. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And we're going to do that using a utility called semanage. There are several options. We want the file context. We're going to do an add. We're going to do a type T for the context. We are then going to apply it to the directory and everything under the directory. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that it does not apply them right away. Unless you want to reboot, you have to run another command. It's called restorecon. We're going to do a -R for recursive, V so I get the feedback right after I do it. So I get the little log message that you see here. Now, I should see the context. If I look underneath the directory, you can see the HTML file has that context now. Now if I hit refresh, it does work. So now let's do the same thing, but let's do it at the port level. I am going to now change the port, the default port. We're going to change that from port 80 to port 82. Well, we changed it to port 82. Now keep in mind, we have to also change, add that to the firewall rules. So let's not forget to do that. SELinux or no SELinux, the firewall needs to be configured. We don't want 80. 80 already works. We want 82, and we want to make sure it's permanent to survive a reboot. So we will do that. So now I am going to do a systemctl restart again. Did I spell systemctl? I did spell it wrong. And now we get an error. And we can see we can type this command here. the journal command, and we can see we in fact do have permission denied. We can type in the same command we did before for specifically for SELinux. And you can see we are getting the socket denied error. So what do we have to do to get that to work? Well, if we do an semanage, as like we did before, I hit the double tab, notice there is a port option. Since I don't know the context off the top of my head, I'm going to do a -L. And I'm going to grep HTTP, otherwise you'll get a lot of other stuff you don't really need. You can see the web ports that are assigned to the current port 80 and 443 assigned to HTTP port _T. That is the context. So let's go ahead and do now the same thing we did before, only with the port. We're going to do the same commands, -A, -T, the context. But in this case, we're going to do what's called a -P for port, the protocol, and then the port number. We're going to do a restart again. And now you can see it did not fail to start, but let's see if everything is working. I did not reload my firewall. When I did the firewall, I added the configuration. I made it permanent, but I didn't reload it. There we go. Now we have everything working. Firewall, SELinux configuration. We're running on port 82, and we moved the data directory, or the root directory. So that is my demo on SELinux. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.